us back to the comments given by President Cyril Ramaphosa at an investment conference this morning. He's been reluctant to speak about those selected to be part of the country's sixth parliament this morning, but he says he's confident that those on the list are people who contribute to growing the economy. He was speaking at the investor conference earlier today, and my colleague Vuyo Mvoko is standing by just to give us his thoughts on what he gleaned from the president's comments. Vuyo, thank you so much for joining us. One cannot look at the comments given by the president without looking at the backdrop in front of which he is speaking today. Just a few days after the national election, and the country sitting with bated breath, waiting to get little bits of details that we can glean from his comments about what we can expect from what the sixth administration will be looking like, who will be in it, and who, importantly, will be part of his cabinet. What did you glean, especially from the opening parts of his comment this morning?
Well, Marcel, not a lot, I must say. And for those of us who have been on the campaign trail over the past couple of months, I think we're justified in saying a lot of what he said is actually what we've heard from him. But of course, that's not to say there aren't a handful of takeaways. He was, speaking to an audience of people who are in charge of 400 billion in investments. In assets, I should say. This is the crowd that he was addressing today. A conference that was a bit something I'm not personally used to, where people won't tell you what the program is and who is part of the audience, what they do, and so on. And they were quite not too keen also on having the media being part of this conversation here today. But of course, in the end, at the insistence of the president's office, we were allowed in as the media. And there's a few things that the president said, and one of them, when he was asked about ESCOM, for example, which the person he was speaking to from Goldman Sachs said, well, look, this is an albatross around the country's neck. What are you planning to do about ESCOM? And one of the things that President Cyril Ramaphosa said there was that we are okay for the winter months, giving an assurance to investors that we're not going to see the load shedding that went up to stage 4 recently, which was one thing that people were happy about. But one of the things he also said was that, and I don't remember hearing him saying it quite emphatically and as openly, he was saying that ESCOM is overstuffed, and the word sensitively is what he used to talk about how he thinks they are going to deal with that particular issue going forward. And I'm sure your NUMSAs and your NUMs and your solidarities are going to have a lot to say about that. But I'm going to bring in our colleague here, John Bailey, who was listening to that conversation between President Cyril Ramaphosa and the Goldman Sachs head here in South Africa. Your takeaways, John?
Well, I think, Vuyo, what was clear is that the president came here with a mission. He knew who these people are and what they want to hear from him. So on the ESCOM issue as well, he mentioned he made it quite clear that there will be restructuring of ESCOM, and as he mentioned, it will have to be handled very sensitively, and the issues that they'll have to address it with the unions. But the restructuring of ESCOM is coming. It will be in line with what we see best practice internationally, because on the one hand it's overstaffing, but he also spoke about the fact that there are opportunities for partnership between government and the private sector, and especially issues around generation, especially. That's where the private sector can come in. But then I think what the audience wanted to know is the issue about the president's cabinet, the restructuring of the cabinet and the composition and the size of that cabinet, because that's really going to determine the way forward for the economy. And the president also made it quite clear that we will see quite a lot of announcements in the next probably 2 weeks concerning that cabinet, because there are indications that he will reduce the number of ministries by as much as 9 ministers that will be dropped, and even up to 15 deputy ministers might be dropped from the current cabinet. Of course, the other issue that he mentioned, the one thing that keeps him awake at night is how to implement growth in this economy, because he wants to see growth. We've been stagnating for a decade now, so how to do that? But of course the key issue is, how do we implement these policies that we are talking about?
Which, of course, is the question he was asked. But here's something I found particularly interesting from what, although he didn't dwell on it, but certainly from what he said, it was that he wants to have a line of sight, I think was the phrase he used. He wants to see all the major areas of the economy, and partly that's the reason he has revived the Research and Economic Policy Unit within his own office. Of course, he is
taking charge of this economy. So I'm sure moving forward we'll see, in terms of policy direction and implementation of this policy, he will be a key driver in all of this. And also the fact that he spoke about Eskom, he said that they actually have a plan. They are doing test runs of this plan, and there's also a state-owned entity, almost war room, that they have established as to how they're going to move forward with the implementation of these plans that they have now, and that they'll also look at different sectors. He wants to see how to grow the economy, because of great concern to the president is the youth unemployment, how to address this issue, and he has urged South African companies to employ the youth, because as we know, many of them leave the universities or their tertiary education institutions without any skills and without any experience. So give them the opportunity. That's what he said. Give the youth the opportunity to really grow. And he cited examples of how the youth, those who have succeeded in some of these programs that are implemented already, how they then employ other youth. And that's what we want to see.
That's we're going to leave it. Well, Marcel, those were just some of the issues we're able to pick up on, certainly from the conversation that President Cyril Ramaphosa had. A couple of ones I may add very quickly. On the Reserve Bank, I realized that he saw the need, even though he wasn't asked, to actually talk about the role of the South African Reserve Bank, saying categorically that he was happy with how things are at the moment, and the independence of the Reserve Bank stays, and their mandate as per the constitutional provisions currently. And I suppose, I mean, to say that to investors was perhaps giving another signal again that his government has no intention of tampering with that role. And right at the end, as he was about to conclude, a question came up again over the land issue. President Cyril Ramaphosa repeating what he has said over and over again, that whatever happens will happen within the ambit of the law and the Constitution. The issue, which he calls the original sin, will have to be addressed, but whatever happens will happen within the law and the Constitution. There will be no land grabs. There again, he was quite categorical.
Vuyo Mvoko and our colleague John Bailey bringing us a wrap of those comments being made by President Cyril Ramaphosa at an investment conference that's being held in Johannesburg this morning. Now, coming up, we take you back to the state capture inquiry in just a bit. To stay with us.